Common Sense Stir, thank you so much for joining us today. Oh, you better get your little notebooks out because you're going to have a lot of information to take down. I have the privilege at my table to introduce you to a magnificently wonderful veteran actress. Please help me welcome Elena Campbell-Martinez. Hello, Elena. How are you?
I'm good, Lydia. Thank you so much. What a wonderful introduction. I feel so
you're welcome.
special.
I was watching, as I was getting ready for the interview, I was watching some of your work. It was lovely. It was just lovely to watch. And what I loved is that you are a legitimate actress, but you also have a business on the side. So that, those of us who've been doing acting a long time, we know that there are down periods.
Right.
We know that some seasons you're not going to book a parking ticket. And so you have to, you have to know where your income is coming from. And most actors panic and don't take care of themselves. So it just was lovely to see that you're kicking butt. You're kicking butt with your acting, but also you got your side hustle, so you're not missing a beat. So I want to get all up in your Kool-Aid. I want to know everything about you. First of all, where are you from?
Well, I was born in Illinois.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, I was born in Illinois. My dad is from Illinois. My mom is from Mexico, from Guadalajara, Jalisco. And so when they got married in Guadalajara, and that's where they met, and they moved to Illinois where my dad was in graduate school.
Wow.
So I was born there. My siblings were all born there. I have a sister and two brothers. And then we grew up in Illinois and in Indiana because as my dad was working his way through, I was a total Hoosier. And then we moved to Texas when we were at middle school. So I consider myself now
you are like a military kid almost.
Well,
just going from place to place.
If you don't get tenure, you just keep moving to another university. That's how the academic life goes. Yeah,
I understand. So so you started in Illinois, born, and then you went to Indiana, then you went to Texas. What brought you to California?
Well, I took kind of a circuitous route, let's say, to get to California because I graduated from high school, went to college in Texas, got a job in Texas as a management consultant. And
what does that mean?
It's like you get hired out of college and you don't know anything really, and they hire you and they say you seem to be a good learner, so we're going to teach you how to code systems like computer systems, how to design them, then how to help people design processes and human resources, all kinds of stuff. And then basically you go in to a company, whether they sell insurance or they make glass or they make Volkswagens, you go in there and you look around, you look at how they do their business and you say, I know I'm only 25 years old or 30 years old, but I'm going to tell you how to do this better.
Wow.
And then you help them do it better. And
so they're organizing their business management wise so that it flows.
Yes.
Okay.
Right. To save money, be more effective, make more sales.
Isn't that lovely to transfer over to acting?
Oh my gosh, yes. Oh my gosh. I mean, I think that I must have been born with some of this ability to look at things and go, how does this work? Oh, I see how it works. How could it be better? I think I must have been born with some of that, but I clearly, over the 14 years that I worked at this company, I learned a lot about how to think about things. So it's kind of hard to turn off. So then from there, I said, okay, I need a break because that was a lot of travel, a lot of work hours, and I liked helping people, but I didn't love helping corporations that sometimes they were firing people. That was their way of helping, So I said, okay, I need a break. I went to Guatemala and I went there for a year. I thought I was going to go there for a year of doing volunteer work so that kind of be of service, clear my head. And I ended up staying there for 6 years.
Wow.
Because when I got there, the guy who ran the project where I worked was called Common Hope. And he said to me, I need you to run our social work department. And I said, well, I don't know anything about social work. I'm a management consultant. He said, well, you didn't know anything about banking or making Volkswagens, did you? And I was like, yeah, you're right. So I figured out social work, and then I redesigned their social work department and, set up processes and training and hired people and did all this stuff. And 6 years later, I decided that it was time to move back to the States. And that's how I ended up in LA.
So that was where you left Guatemala and went right to came right to Los Angeles.
Yes.
Wow. Okay. Because you just jacked me up right now. So had you wanted to pursue acting at any time before that?
Well, when we were little, like when we were growing up, my mom was an artist. My mom loved acting and writing and singing and writing songs. She was a professional singer before she got married. And so when we were little, our entertainment, if mom and dad didn't go out, to a party or whatever, they stayed home on a weekend night, we would put on a show. And so the four of us we'd figure out the show, we'd make up the show, which was mostly based, I'm sure, mostly on black and white movies we'd seen, or if it was Christmas time, it'd be like about the Virgin Mary and Jesus, whatever the stories we already knew. And so then we would put on a show, and we would dress up my brothers. They were smaller, so we would dress them up and tell them what parts they had to do. My sister and I were always in charge, and we would act out these shows, and I loved it, but it was just in front of my mom and my dad. And I was a painfully shy child. Like at school, I could not speak. I knew the answer and I couldn't raise my hand. I was that shy. So it never occurred to me that you could do this outside of your house. And I tried it once in college. A friend of mine just coerced me into being in the chorus of Bye Bye Birdie. And I did it and I had so much fun, but I was like, whew, that was so scary. I don't know if I can ever do that again. Plus, I was on my track to I gotta go to college, get a job, blah, blah, blah. It didn't even occur to me to do it. But when I was in Guatemala, I would go to plays in English. There was a community theater there that did plays in English. And I would go to these plays and I would just be like, oh, this looks so fun to be in a play. And somebody said, well, you're part of the community. You can just do it. And I was like, oh, no, I'm too scared. But eventually I just walked up to a director one night after the play and I said, I want to be in a play. And I was scared to death. And I think probably for the first 3 plays I did, I was scared to death. I loved it. But every time I was going to go on stage, I just felt like I was going to just dissolve with nerves, But I couldn't stop.
What did you learn in that period?
Well, I learned that, first of all, if you go on stage and people are looking at you and you're saying words, you aren't literally going to die. You're not going to die from that. Whereas there's a little part of your brain, the lizard brain, that tries to protect you that says, yes, danger, Elena, there's death here, if you speak in front of people or if you, act in front of people. So I learned that I was not literally going to die, and anything that's not literally going to kill you, you can try it and you can keep trying it if you love it, And so I did 12 plays in the time that I was there, in the 3 years that I had left there. And I started taking classes. And there was a woman in town, her name was Vera Gregg, may she rest in peace. She was in her 70s and she was Swiss, and she had run an acting school in Paris for 30 years. And she had gone to Guatemala to retire. So she had taught Daniel Day-Lewis and Juliette Binoche, and she was teaching classes, and she was teaching them in Spanish, even though she didn't really speak Spanish, but her partner was fluent in French and English and Spanish, so her partner would translate. And most of the people in the class, we spoke English and Spanish, and I remembered a little bit of French from high school. And but I just always, she taught me a lot, and I still hear Vera's voice sometimes in my head, because she always used to say, "Toma tiempo. Toma tiempo." Like, that was her thing, is like, don't just say the words, but like, take your time and feel it and let the feelings come up. And that's like the mantra that I have to keep repeating in my head, because I'm and so that's how I want to do everything.
Right.
And that doesn't work when you're trying to find a character, when you're trying to find an emotion. Toma tiempo.
That's beautiful. I'm going to backtrack just for a second, because you made a comment. I have never heard it before. The lizard brain.
Yeah. So there's this little part of your brain that's like the oldest part of your brain, and I can't think of what the science name of it is, but it's like, I call it the lizard brain. A lot of people call it the lizard brain, but it's the part of your brain that was developed back in prehistoric times to protect you from saber-toothed tigers and, T-Rexes or whatever. I don't know who could have killed you back then. So it's the little part that goes, don't go outside your cave. Don't do this. Don't go outside alone. Don't do these different things that are dangerous, right? And it's still there, and it still has good intentions, but like when it says, no, don't make a big deal about this because it's dangerous, or don't try to do this new thing because what if you fail? If you fail, that's really dangerous, And I mean, it says don't touch that stove because look, it's red, and it says don't walk in front of a car that's speeding down Riverside, right? It tells you some stuff that's super good.
Right.
But the things like that says don't take a chance. Don't try something new. Don't dream bigger than what you think is safe. When it tells you those things, you have to kind of sit it down and say, look, thank you very much. I appreciate all your help. You've kept me so safe. Look how old I am and I'm still here. Thank you. But please be quiet right now because Mama's got to go work. Mama's got to do whatever it is that is in her heart, whether it's getting on stage for the very first time or starting a new business or whatever you think is the thing that might be too scary.
Right. Okay. So that was good. That was good. I call that the critic, and you call it the lizard brain. That's good. So now you're getting acting under your belt. You're starting to get your courage. You're starting to love acting. This woman, God bless her, wherever she is, that for giving you that desire, to opening up that desire in you. Okay, so now you decide you come to Los Angeles. Did you make the conscious effort to say, I'm going to Los Angeles to pursue acting, or I'm just going to Los Angeles because I want to be back in the States and I'd like to try something new? What was the intention of you coming to LA?
The intention was to come to be an actress because I was looking at the States and I was like, well, I could go back to Texas. I could go to San Francisco. I had lived in San Francisco for a couple of years before I moved to Guatemala. I could have gone back to Mexico City because I had lived in Mexico City for a while. But my sister was here in LA, and my nephew was 3.
And is your sister who's a voiceover artist?
Yes, she's a voiceover artist. So she was here for a while in LA, trying to do also the acting thing. And she said, you should come here because I knew I could be an actress anywhere. I could move to Portland or Austin because obviously if you can be an actress in Antigua, Guatemala, you can do it anywhere in the United States. But she says, if you move here, with your theater background, I bet you could do stuff. And I was like, well, I don't know. I mean, who's going to hire some middle-aged lady, because I was in my 40s, a middle-aged lady who...
Oh, I love it even more. Go ahead, girl. Go ahead, girl. Go ahead.
This is a dream. I was in my 40s, and I was like, all I've done is community theater in a third world country. So that didn't seem like a big old resume to me. But I thought, you know what? It would be really cool to spend time with my sister and spend time with my nephew because Andy had been born while I was in Guatemala. So I'd only got to see him like once a year. I'd come home and then I was still like on the fence about it. And then President Bush set a deadline for, I guess, to start the Iraq War. He set a deadline one day. It was like in March of 2003, I think. And I was traveling around. I had finished up in Guatemala and I was traveling around, spending 12 months visiting friends. I just wanted to take like a little break before I officially moved back. And so I was getting on a plane somewhere. I was flying, I think, back to San Antonio. And I heard on the news that they said, he set this deadline, and if, whatever, they don't do what they're supposed to do by 5 p.m., then we're at war. And I was on the plane going, wow, our whole lives are going to change. Like, obviously, they're not going to do what we said. Obviously, there's going to be a war, and our world might never be the same. And I thought, do I want to look back 10, 20 years ago and say, when I was young, when I was in my 40s, I should have moved to LA to be an actor, because they say you never regret the things that you try. You only regret the things that you don't try. So on that flight, I decided when I got off the plane, I was like, I'm moving to LA. I'm going to be an actor. And that's what I did. And I decided at that time, I said, I'm going to stay and I'm going to do this as long as I'm still having fun, as long as I'm still learning and improving and getting better, and as long as I'm enjoying the process of it. And as long as that continues to be, I will do it. And you notice I didn't say as long as I make a lot of money or become a big star, get an Oscar. Like that was never in the list of as long as. And so far, so good.
Okay, so now you're a double inspiration. Not only do you have a side hustle, but you started acting in your 40s. I love this because acting you can start at any time in your life. So you come to Los Angeles, and what are the first things you do when you get here?
Well, before I even started thinking about what I was going to do, my friend, who actually she'd been a roommate of mine for about a couple of years when I was working as a management consultant, she'd been a housemate of mine. She called me up and she said, "Are you here?" And I said, "Yes, I'm here. I just arrived." And she said, "Do you have a job yet?" And I was like, "No." I said, "I guess I'm going to have to learn how to waitress because I don't know, I have to figure out what kind of job." And she said, "Well, I can get you a job at Warner Brothers as a project manager assistant." She says, "It's way below what you did before, but since you already know how to manage projects, you'll be a great assistant because you already know what they need even before they think of it." And she says, and it can be very flexible. You get your work done and you go on your auditions. And I was like, auditions? I don't even know how that's going to happen. But she was like thinking ahead that I would be having auditions. And so I said, great. So I started working at Warner Brothers. That was like the first thing that happened. I didn't even want to start working yet. I wanted to kind of get my bearings and, pick out my new, bedspread or whatever, And so I started working at Warner Brothers and I was a project manager assistant. And I called myself a super secretary for a long time because I was like, I think mostly I get lunch and organize meetings. But it was great because I was getting money.
You were on the lot?
I was on right off the lot, like in the buildings that are right across the freeway.
Yes.
And working for the MIS department, which is the Management Information System. Okay. So the people that build the computer systems, to support the work of the studio. So the people were designing this big, huge system, and they had a lot of meetings, and they needed somebody to organize everything, and so that's what I did. And a couple weeks later, I started, getting on, I started asking people, how do people get auditions, And so they're like, well, you sign up for Actors Access and you sign up for LA Casting and Now Casting. Remember that?
Right.
So I signed up for all those things, and then I started looking into classes, and I started going to some basic classes.
Who did you study with first?
First, I went to TVI Studios.
Okay, that's in the that was in the Valley.
It was in the Valley. I don't know if it's even
Sherman
still
Oaks?
there in Sherman Oaks.
Yes, I remember it. Yes,
and
right near Van Nuys.
Yes. Yeah. Right before you get to the 405.
Yeah, because there was
an El Torito in the parking lot.
Yes, and there was also a place that I would go get DVDs made.
Oh.
Duplicated. So yes.
DVDs.
So I used to see that little the sign for TBI. Go ahead.
It was great because it was the people that worked there were all actors, and it was kind of fun, when I first went in there and they're like, well, read this, and they'll say, they said, you have, natural talent, blah, 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 and I told my sister, I was like, this is like if you go to the gym and they give you a little test and go, you have natural talent. You should work out at our gym. I'm like, of course I should work out here. But that's the way I looked at it, was like as a gym. And so I had a coach there that was like, helped me figure out what I should take. I took a couple of classes. I took some casting director workshops and met some casting directors, and then got some jobs then because I meet the casting director from a soap opera, and then next thing you know, they're bringing me in for a role, and so then I'm working on soap operas. So within the first 6 months of being here, I was working on a soap, and I was a nurse, so I kept coming back, because people kept getting sick and all that. And that's how soaps work. People keep getting sick. And then a couple of months later, they had one of those, what do you call it? Like the workshop where the agents come in. Yeah, like a panel of commercial agents. So they had 9 commercial agents come in. So you come back 3 times, so you meet 3 people. You give them your resume and your headshot. They look at it, and then they have you do a commercial line or whatever. You do that, and then I of course wrote thank you notes to all of them and said, hey, thank you so much. It was nice to meet you. And then I got 5 interviews.
Wow.
So I was like, wow, I was in my mid 40s and I was ethnically ambiguous. Do you remember that word?
Oh, yeah.
Like that was very,
Yes,
very
yes.
hot, about 15 years ago. And so I had my 5 interviews and I ended up getting 3 agents that said they wanted to work with me. And so I picked the ones that I had the feeling right here
Right.
about. And so I picked them and they were my agents for 16 years.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm very loyal. Getting a theatrical agent took a little bit more, more work. And I think it always does. I think it's always slightly easier to get a commercial
Yes.
agent.
Yes. Because there's always a need for commercials.
Yes.
There's always, it's a numbers game.
Right.
It's not quality. It's quantity.
Right.
So if you're starting in acting, the best way to start is to get a commercial agent. Because
Yes.
once you have a commercial agent, then it's easier to get a theatrical agent.
Right.
But it's hard. It's harder, not impossible, but it is harder to go from just trying to get theatrical into commercial.
Yes. Yeah. I that's what I tell
Yes.
young people all the time. They're like, well, first I have to get an agent. I'm like, no. That's not the first thing. Like you have so many things to do before you get an agent. And on the theatrical side, like I said, I started, I'd go to commercial workshops, meet casting directors, and then, start getting auditions that way. And at one point, I'd already booked a few jobs, and I met a woman on a commercial shoot who she was like, "Oh, you're so lovely. You should meet my theatrical agent." And I was like, "Oh, thank you so much." She introduced me, and the theatrical agent signed me, and I was just thrilled. But then when she started sending me out, I felt like it didn't make
fit.
sense. Like I would get the sides and it would say Jorge's young wife. And I was like, I hope Jorge's in his 60s because otherwise I'm not a young wife. You know what I mean? And then
Right.
I go to the audition and I go, are you here for Jorge? And some 30-year-old guy is like, yeah. I'm like, oh my gosh. And then the other one is like 60, woman in her 60s. And I was like, oh my gosh. So I like put on, put my hair in a bun, put on pearls, really dark lipstick and go in there. And the casting director is like, that was really nice for you, Elena, but I'm sorry, you're just way too young. And I'm like, he says, you look the same age as your son that we already cast. So it was like, I started feeling, and then, a casting director called me one time and she said, oh my gosh, I'm so glad I found your cell phone. I've been trying to get a hold of your agent and her emails are bouncing back and, her voicemail is full. And she says, I want you to come in, for a co-star. And but for me, I was like, I don't want to miss a co-star
Right.
audition. So
Any audition.
I wrote her a very, polite and gracious letter the next day and said, I'm sorry, but I'm, moving on. So I didn't have really an agent for the first 5-6 years that I was here. I didn't have a theatrical agent.
But you were booking work.
But I was booking work. So it was good because then when I did.
Which says you don't need an agent.
You don't
It's
need
nice,
an agent.
but you still can get work without it.
You can. And you have to focus on it and you have to
Yes.
hustle. And then the good thing is that builds that muscle. So once you do get your theatrical agent, you don't just go, well, I'm just going to have a cup of tea and sit at my house and wait for the phone to ring, because you don't do that either. Once you have an agent, you still have to think the same way.
Right.
And
So
work
let
the
me
same
ask
way.
you a question. So now you're working at Warner Brothers. You're getting bookings. You got a commercial agent. You're going up for theatrical auditions. Do you put together a hit list of shows or agency shows or casting directors that you want to meet? How are you starting to line up your work? Like or your your content, like I want to meet so and so. I think I'd be right for Shonda Rhimes' Grey's Anatomy, or I think I'd be right for CSI. How are you starting to maneuver?
That's at that point. That's what I was doing. I was looking. Back then there were a lot of casting workshops, which now I don't think there are. But back then there were a lot, and there were a lot of different places you could go.
Did you have acting friends that would say, "Hey, don't go to that place. Go to
Yes.
this place"?
Yes.
Okay, so
Yes.
the importance of community.
Yes.
So
oh
as
my
an actor, a community is so important. It's like you come to LA or you go to New York, you want to connect yourself within a community so that you can get all the information, like where to go, where to stay away from, uh, who's not a good guy or a good
Right.
woman, and who are the people who love actors.
Right, right. Yes, the people who love actors and the people who are running, because if you're going to a casting director workshop, of course you're hoping that that person will be, impressed with your work and save your headshot and go, "Hey, maybe I'll bring her in for something." But you also are smart to know that that's not necessarily what's going to happen.
Well,
You
but
you want to learn
unfortunately, a
something.
lot of actors are not savvy to the fact that that may not happen. They're thinking, I'm going to go here, pay my fee, and they're going to hire me.
Yeah, that's
And I think you coming in later in life,
yes.
and you having worked in business and understanding business, you didn't say this, but this is what I'm taking away from it, is that you had a sense of business, so you understood that acting is a business.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
you weren't coming in going, here's my headshot, I paid for the class, and now I'm going to get a part
Right.
in Doogie Howser's next adventure.
Right.
You're not thinking that.
Right.
But unfortunately, most actors are.
Right.
They're thinking, I'm gonna go here, or I met this casting director in the hallway of a store, and she said, "You've got a great look. Give me a call."
Right.
Now I'm going to be a star.
Yeah.
Or
Right.
I got a 2 lines in a movie. I'm a star now.
Right. Yeah. I used to I tease my husband because back, in the day, when I was starting out, I would get a part, and he would say, "This could be your big break." I'm like, "No, honey, this is not my big break. I'm going to be on this show and I'm super excited about it. I'm going to do the best job I can. I'm thrilled to death, but this is not my big break." I don't know what, when and where the big break is going to come. If it ever comes, maybe yes, if you come in and you're 22 and you have no credits and then somebody puts you in a J.J. Abrams movie, that's if you're the lead in a J.J. Abrams movie, that's definitely a big break. But if you come in here in your 40s and you're like, did a few soap operas, did a few co-stars on, prime time. I mean, the first co-star I got on prime time, I felt like it felt like a big break. It felt like, starring in a J.J. Abrams movie to me.
Right.
But my business side brain goes,
Right.
That is not the big break. Nobody watches you there saying 5 lines on a nighttime show and goes, "Oh my God, she's the next it girl." That doesn't happen.
Right. But the lovely thing is, and you guys, I'll have her IMDb link on the description below. But the great thing about your work is that you have amassed a lovely, just a lovely bunch of work. I mean, you've got a pretty good resume of somebody who started in their 40s.
Mm-hmm.
So, consistent. Your
Right.
work is consistent. And I think as actors, that's what we want.
Right.
We want to work consistently, because then the industry takes us serious,
Right.
and they want to hire us because they go, "Oh my God, they're always working." That's all they need to know.
Mm-hmm.
You're always working.
Yep.
They, even if they look at your resume and they go, "Oh my God, they're still working, they're still doing that," it's wonderful. So you are a success story because you've been able to continue the flow. Sometimes people book a job and then they don't work again for years.
Right.
Or or it never comes again for whatever reason. But the goal is, yes, we all want to be rich and famous, but we all want to work regularly and be able to invest
Our
pension and
yes.
health in the union, so that when we retire, we have something that we
Right.
can live off of if we so choose. So it's just lovely to hear your story, because you were able to implement, just from what I'm hearing, you were able to implement everything you learned in life into acting, into the business side. So I just love this. I
Oh.
love it. So okay, so now you're acting, you're working at Warner Brothers. When do you decide, hey, I'm going to get out of Warner Brothers and I think I want to start my own stuff. Or did you leave Warner Brothers, go somewhere else while you're still in pursuit of your acting?
I stayed at Warner Brothers for over 10 years, off and on. I mean, there were a couple of times where a project would end and they would say, oh, we got to lay you off. And it wasn't really a layoff because I was just a contractor, so I'd just go home and not make money. But, those times were few and far between, maybe 6 months. And then some executive would call me and say, hey, are you still on the bench? I'm like, yep. Or my husband would come home from golf and say, hey, one of my buddies asked if you're still on the bench. I'm like, and that's how they talk, right? Because they're all sports guys. And I'm like, yeah. And what'd you tell him? He's like, I said, yeah, she's on the bench. She's ready to go back. So I went back. And the last time that I went back, I was really blessed to work for a guy that recognized that my talents were being wasted as a super secretary. And so he said, look, I want to give you more responsibility. And I was like, I don't want to have a job that I go home and worry about at night. I want to get it done while I'm here. I'll work until midnight if I need to, but I want to go home with no worries. And I want to be able to just go, I have an audition, or even better, I'm going for 2 days for a shoot. I'm not going to be here. And he said, I'm going to hire you an assistant. And he says, you can choose that assistant. And so I hired an actress because I was like, let's spread the wealth here. So I hired another actress to be my assistant. And then he raised my hourly rate so that I wouldn't have to work as many hours.
Awesome.
So then I had more authority. I had more responsibility. I had an assistant to do all the stuff that I was doing before. And I could help him more with the trying to prevent problems, in the finances and all that kind of stuff. And so that was great because then I was able to really, kind of feel much more solid financially, and still have the freedom because my, on the other side, the auditions were increasing and the bookings were increasing. And so I now had an agent at that point. I got a theatrical agent who was lovely. And then, it all kind of balanced out.
So what I love is that you not only have a regular job, but now you have a career job and you are in pursuit of your acting. So you're not missing anything.
Right.
You've been given this opportunity to manage and have an assistant so that if you need to go off, you can. So during this time, how are you balancing work and acting? Auditions, acting roles, how are you being able to handle that?
Well, I always, my thing was always, and I tried to impress this on my assistant. I told her when I hired her, I said, I need you to have this kind of work ethic, is that this job, the Warner Brothers job, cannot suffer because of our acting work. And most importantly, they just need to feel safe and taken care of. So for example, if I had to leave in the middle of the day for an audition and I knew that my boss had a big meeting the next morning, I would go in his office and say, hey, I'm taking off for an audition. I probably will be back about 5:30, but this is what my assistant is doing to get ready. And then I'm going to come back at 5:30 or 6, and I'm going to make sure the deck is all good, and it will be on your desk tonight before I leave. So that when you come in the morning, because what if I wake up with a stomach, stomach problem or something, and I can't come in the morning? I would leave the deck on his desk at night so that when he came in, he could just go, she's taking care of me. And as long as they were taken care of, that's what I did. So some weeks I might work 20 hours, some weeks I might work 50 hours, but I always made sure that my Warner Brothers job was taken care of. I worked on budget spreadsheets in my trailer. Now that's not ideal to be on set and you're waiting, but how it is. You spend a lot of time in your trailer. Right. So I'd be in my trailer and trying to look on my phone, because this was before iPads and stuff, and looking on my phone and trying to look at spreadsheets and find problems, and calling my assistant and saying, hey, take a look at this. I just did everything I could to keep them cozy, feeling secure and taken care of. And my boss would be like, break a leg, Elena, break a leg. And I'd be like, I booked something. He's like, yay. The only time he was always like, he said, wow, you're booking so many things. What if you book a sitcom? Because, at Warner Brothers, you know how everything works, right? Even if you're an IT person. He's like, what if you book a sitcom? That's like a 5-day-a-week job. And I was like, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. So don't worry. But he was so supportive of my career because he felt safe and taken care of.
I asked that because I too had a career job while I was doing my acting at a certain period. And so what I learned, and I was young, I was in my 20s, and I was programming a radio station. It just happened that way. But, and I would tell people, I said, I'm an actor. Just so you know, I'm an actor. And, oh, yeah, no problem. I said, so that means I can go on auditions. We're not going to have a problem. And so everything was honky-dory. And then I remember that period where I was working. And then they were like, well, you're going to have to decide. I said, okay, see ya.
Yeah.
But it does happen, and you want to be able to leave in good standing. You want to be able to say, you know what, while I had this job, I was full in integrity and ethic, and I showed up, I did my work, nothing was ever left. And I think it's important because sometimes actors, they're taking a job just to get the check. Right. But they're not committed, they're not paying attention, they're not present.
Right.
Because all they want to do is be on set somewhere. And you have a responsibility. If you take on a job, you need to be present in that job while you're doing it.
I've always thought that, and I've said this, it's like if there's anything in your life that you are half-assing, excuse my French, that's not very French, but if you're half-assing something, it bleeds into other parts of your life, And so I've said this to young people. It's like, if you're going to take a day job, don't call it my survival job because that makes it sound like, oh, you're just surviving. It's a day job or whatever. Or you can call it's the job that allows you to pursue your dreams, which is what it really is. But don't half-ass it. Whatever it is, if somebody tells me, hey, go make Xeroxes. I don't know if anybody knows what a Xerox is anymore, but go make copies, right? And if somebody says, go make 500 copies, that no matter how old I am or how much education I am or whatever, I'm going to make the best copies. They're not going to be blurry. They're not going to be crooked. And if I have to staple them, you better believe the staple is going to be parallel to the side of the page because that's my job and my quality that I put into it. That's like whatever you come with, the intention that you come with, that's the most important thing. And it bleeds into the rest of your life. So if you have a day job where you're like, I'm just going to tell them that blah, 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 instead of telling them the truth or instead of telling them in advance, then next thing you know, you're in bed until noon and then you get up and you go to the gym and then it's 5:00. And what did you do today for your career? Now you're half-assing what you say is your dream career.
Right. And also take a job that you like. Yes. I think that's really important for actors and artists. Take some kind of job that you really like. So even though your stuff may not be happening, you go into that place and you feel peaceful. You go, I like these people. I like doing this stuff. Not, I hate it. I can't wait to get out of here. I can't, because that what it does, you talk about bleeding over. When you go into the audition, you're carrying that stuff on you. You may think you're not, but it's on you. And so you want stuff that makes you feel joyful. Yes. It's like, how do I turn this around to be grateful? Just be grateful because you have a job and somebody else doesn't.
Exactly. So many other people are like, oh, I wish I could find a job. And you're sitting here going, oh, I hate my job. And it's so easy to find things that you like. I really think if you just put on your gratitude hat, you can find things that you like and you can find things that you can enjoy. I mean, if you told me, well, you have to go work at a restaurant. I've never worked at a restaurant in my life. It just turned out that way. But if you said you have to go work at a restaurant now, Elena, I would not go, oh no, a restaurant. These are all the things that suck about working at a restaurant. No, I would say, okay, so what do I need to learn? And then what would be fun? Well, it'd be fun. I'd meet a lot of cool people. And if I'm nice to them, some of them are going to be nice to me and some of them aren't. And I'm going to know that's their problem. It's not about me. And so, you know what I mean? You can start right away. You can quickly figure out how to find, like, oh, maybe I could learn how to cook. If I worked at a restaurant, that would be cool. Everybody would love that if I learned how to cook, like that kind of thing.
Or how can I treat this job like it's an acting role?
Yeah.
You know, I'm acting like I work in a restaurant. So let me really take that in, because what did Stella Adler teach me? She taught me research everything and go in there and do it like you really do it.
Yes.
So then I take that into the job and I do that. So then that way, when you get into the acting jobs, there's no big adjustment,
Right.
because you've been doing it you've been practicing the whole time.
Right.
So that, to me, that makes sense. It just makes sense to go, okay, let me go in here and just do what, I'm an actor. So act
Right.
like you do it.
Right.
As opposed to, I hate this, I just want to be acting. We act every day.
Right. Right.
Every day. So if I'm going to act, I'm going to get paid for it. And if I've got a job, that's acting. It's like, let me get paid. Yes, let's do it. As opposed to going and not having a job and then being miserable, hating everybody who is working, and
Right.
you're not really taking care of yourself. So it's just, it can be a vicious cycle. So I love that you talk about this.